Hello and greetings from sunny Portugal. I'm Maureen Robertson. I'm a medical herbalist. I've been in practice for almost 30 years, and I just want to start with my gratitude to Pam Montgomery for the inspiration to make this video to share a little bit about my approach to plant communication and working with natural phenomena. So to begin my story, I'm here in southwest Algarve at Mellotus Herb Farm, which I've set up with my partner, my musician partner Jose, and we've tried to create a beautiful sanctuary for our students, our patients, our friends, and all the living beings that are here, all the plant beings and the animal beings and the insect beings, which we have the privilege of being guardians of. So here we are in the garden. We've got olive tree behind us, and I want to share a little bit about the method that I find really useful in studying plant phenomena, the phenomena of medicinal plants. And lots of people ask about how can I really get to know a plant, and you hear a lot about intuitive plant communication, and people really say to me a lot, how do I know it's not just me making it up? How can I really be sure that I'm an authentic representation of the plant through my study? So I find that this method, which is a scientific step-by-step repeatable method, is a really valuable protocol to follow that gives you the confidence that you really are making inroads into the inner being and the inner principle and the inner essence that's speaking through the plant, through your own essence. So you're touched by the message of the plant, and that's how it should be. And so, it is part of you because you're being the instrument that is being played by these magnificent beings, which are the plants that we love so well. So I first came across this method when I heard about a woman in Edinburgh, just outside Edinburgh, who was said to listen to the plants. And whilst I've been in Portugal for the last 5 years, I've spent most of my time in practice in Scotland. And so I had this wonderful opportunity to work with this teacher, this woman that listened to the plants, called Margaret Cahoon, and she became a long-term teacher of mine until she passed a couple of years ago. So we actually worked together for nearly 30 years for the main bulk of my time in practice. And I was very, very grateful to have met her so early on, because it shaped the direction that my practice was going to continue to evolve in for all this time, these decades. She wrote a book called New Eyes for Plants. Sorry, it's back to front with the mirror writing, New Eyes for Plants. And it's really it's a workbook. It's called a workbook for observing and drawing plants. And there's lots of exercises and illustrations of ways of studying plants. Nearly on every page there's beautiful illustrations and exercises, and I really would recommend getting hold of that book if you want to go further with this method at the end of listening to the story of how we can apply it. So she's writing about Germany's bard Goethe, who was a very well-known poet and playwright in the late 1700s, early 1800s, who was actually a polymath. He was interested not only in the arts, but in the emerging scientific paradigm at the time, where the newly born scientists were exploring nature by breaking her down into her component parts. So there was a lot of dissection and a lot of looking at dead matter, dead people and dead parts of the plant. And Goethe was thinking, well, hang on a minute, if you're looking at something that's dead, then there's no living essence there anymore. There's where is the living principle that has a vitality, and that is going to be missing if you're looking at something that's already dead. So Goethe was really interested in the essential nature of living phenomena, and he saw that there was the nature of the whole in everything that was alive. And so by looking at just dead parts, you've missed a whole important aspect of the living principle of how an organism, how a living being has manifested itself in the way that it's come to be. So he wanted to really show these new scientists that there was more to science than just looking at cutting up dead things and looking at their component parts. And he was particularly interested in the phenomena of metamorphosis in nature. So, for example, looking at the way a plant grows gives you a dynamic image of the plant in both its physicality, and he even coined the term the morphology of an organism, which we still use in scientific terminology today to talk about form and function and the structures of an organism, whether it be a plant or a person, and anatomy and physiology. So his theory of metamorphosis and morphology leads us to this dynamic image of the living plant. And so we have the physical aspects that we can see, and then there are aspects that are not apparent to our senses. Because there is a life force in all living beings, there is something that is beyond what we can see with just our senses, or sense with our senses. So he was really interested in these unseen aspects of the living plant in this case, and he saw that there was a principle according to which the plant came into existence, an original aspect of life, so to speak, and that this was linked to the permanent element of the eternal nature or the eternal essence of a living being or the plant. And this is quite a deep concept. When I first started hearing these terms of the eternal nature of ourselves and of plants, it was quite mind-blowing, because he was a lone voice in this new scientific paradigm, saying that we are eternal beings, and all these living beings around us that we're studying are also have the eternal, have the God life force in them. And we have to pay attention to that, because that's going to give us a much deeper revelation of the quality of the essence of a plant or a living being, and indeed ourselves, our own inner essence. And so the science that Goethe developed is really a language of the spiritual soul. And that's what he called it, that it was reading nature's holy and open secret. And that's the title of another book I want to share with you, which was written, Goethe Science, which was written by Rudolf Steiner. And this particular translation, they've called it Nature's Open Secret, but the original translation was just called Goethe Science. So it's an introduction to Goethe's scientific writings by Rudolf Steiner, who I mentioned earlier had been given the task to edit Goethe's scientific writings, and it took him 12 years and helped shape his spiritual science of anthroposophy that he shared with the world. So this language of the spiritual soul that Goethe was so interested in, that he wanted to expand and bring forth he said that you can find this essence of the plant when it passes away, returning to the sphere beyond, and the sphere beyond sensory perception. So he's saying that's where the essence of the plant lies. So how do we get in touch with the essence of the plant that's actually gone beyond the sphere beyond our sensory perception? And it's really through Goethe's magnificent thought structure of looking at nature that kind of leads us step by step, guides us step by step to explore how to find, how to go beyond the spheres of sensory perception and really capture the essence of a plant in its living vitality, vital spirit that can share with us its medicinal properties and heal us. And these are really deep, incredible things to be available to us, so that plants have a medicinal quality that can actually heal us at the deepest level possible, our own inner essence of natural essence of our deep inner interiority. So he had this idea that all is leaf, that you can follow a plant's signature and patterns by looking at its growth process and looking at, he would say that the plant is a living whole consisting of mutually interpenetrating formulative principles which enliven one another and become whole. So let's see how nature is doing that. So here we have a vetch. There's a tiny flower, purple flower starting to form here. So here we have the leaves, and you can see that there's there's a mid vein in the middle of the leaf, and then on this side we can see a fruit, a pod, and it's a pea family member, so it's like a pea pod. Can you see how if we took one of the leaves and we folded it in half along that midline, we basically come up with the pod? Don't know if you can see that. So here's the leaf, and if we folded that in half along its mid vein, you're getting the pea pod. And the flower itself, there's only a tiny flower here, is also like, you can see the bract of the flower is a little bit like you can see that there's a leaf relationship there as well to the flower. So I hope you can see that. So this is kind of trying to illustrate Goethe's incredible thought structure that all is leaf, and that you can see patterns in the plant that is giving you clues to its essential nature, the principles of its essence. So another thing to consider, that what Goethe was sharing with us, is that it's important to keep in mind that the outer appearance is governed by an inner principle. And he really got the insight into this when he went on his Italian sojourn, where he left the lush forests of Northern Europe, where the plants are growing luxuriously with lots of shade and sun and water. And then he travelled south over the Alps into Italy, and then all the way down to the south of Italy to Sicily, which is almost like desert conditions. And he noticed the same plants in these different environments could look almost completely different, like a dandelion growing in a dark, shady, watery forest in the north of Germany is going to have much lusher, greener leaves and more abundant plant material than up in the altitude of the Alps, where it's going to be affected by its chemical composition as well, of the gaseous exchanges and so on. And then down in the desert, it's going to be in a much more concentrated form. So if you took each of those plants, the one from the really lush one from the northern German forest with all the water and all the rivers, and then the one up in the altitude, which is looking slightly smaller and maybe more exposed, and then the one in Sicily, in the desert type environment of Sicily, where it's really shrunken and concentrated. If you line them all up, you at first glance you'd think that they were 3 different plants, but when you look more closely, you see that there's still the essence of dandelion in all 3. So this is what he was really interested in, you know, that the external factors can influence the formation of a being, but there's still the inner principle that stays the same, and that he likened to the eternal essence that we all have sprung from the cosmic universe, the cosmic realms, the celestial realms, before we manifested and incarnated here on earth. So, and we will return to our soul will return to these celestial realms once we leave this earthly body. So this was what he was really interested in connecting with, this eternal essence, the nature, the true eternal nature and spiritual nature of a being that really gives you its true essence and its true message and its true the way it can, the information about how it can help your soul process and your soul evolution. And he even called this, you know, he took this deeper and deeper, and he even called this, that following this process was basically a human journey of universal oneness, because you could see the eternal in yourself and in all other living beings. He talked about how one of his quotes was, to find yourself in the infinite, you must first differentiate and then combine. Or once we've done with our distinguishing, we must then a life-filled giving on the separated parts bestow. And this gives you a revelatory moment when you're looking at a plant, when you're trying to really connect with the essence of the plant. You can see that the whole is working in every organ, that's a holographic impulse, and that the essence of the plant, he said, sings out through every pore. So it's like the patterns within the plant are singing out through every pore if you can allow yourself the space to see it. He was also influenced by other great thinkers and philosophers of the time and before. He was a great fan of Paracelsus, who was one of the last alchemical physicians. He was practicing in the late 1400s and was really using spagyric medicine and astrological considerations, medical astrology. And he talked about how the entire universe is conceived of such a living being. He saw that there was a relationship between the forests and stars. He even there was a term for it called the Iliaster, how forests and stars were of the same source, so the same origin, that the entire universe is conceived of such a living being, this holographic impulse that we can all follow, that one aspect, like looking at one facet of a diamond, can reveal the whole. And that's really this magical way in of communing with a plant. Really, you are in communion with the plant, and you're both kneeling at the altar of the eternal divine essence, that the one source that is trying to communicate through nature and to reflect itself through nature and through us. It's the great universe source trying to see itself through us. So we have a bit of a task. Our deed is to try to demonstrate our divine nature and recognize it in others and other beings, other non-human beings. And actually, this is quite an opportune time to be talking about this. I'm speaking to you on Friday the 5th of June, which is the full moon and a lunar eclipse. And it's also at this time of humanity when we're in this really dark shadow side where we're really being forced to look at our inner selves and the shadows within our humanity as a whole. And so this idea of learning about Goethe's human journey of universal oneness is timeless and is always going to be useful for us, and particularly at this time. So I really want to acknowledge that consciousness that is being called in at this time for humanity's evolution into our really communing with our higher selves and our higher consciousness. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'd like to share with you some other quotes from some of Goethe's contemporaries and people that he corresponded with, and really were also following the same train of thought. So the philosopher Schiller, for example, who Goethe had extensive correspondence with, he said that you cannot understand nature until you can recreate her within yourself. So that's this idea of really looking deeply into the inner workings of the plant and this eternal essence, the essence of the true nature of the plant. To do that, you have to use the common currency, which is your own eternal true essence within your own nature, within your inner nature. So you have to go within to be able to really bring out the essence of the plant. So you have to touch your own essence to be able to interpret the essence of the plant. And Goethe said that human beings were the most perfect instrument to interpret natural phenomena. But to do that, we have to be familiar with our own inner nature. And this is something that all the great teachers of this time are telling us, that this kind of the message from this experience of being isolating ourselves from others and really needing to take this time out. It's like humanity's having a time out, and that's giving us the perfect opportunity to really dive into our inner nature and do the spiritual work that's required to help this evolutionary shift in human consciousness. So there's never been a better time to explore this way of communing with plants and communing with ourselves at the same time, and the divine nature that is in both of us. So here's another couple of quotes that can help kind of illustrate this process of connecting with your inner nature so that you can express the inner nature of another living being. Emerson, the American philosopher Emerson, said, "In this moment, I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing, yet I see all." And it's like kind of getting away from the outer external forces and really connecting with the inner principles that shape our nature, our divine nature. And through this process, we're actually freeing the spirit from the plant. And in that process, we're revealing something that others haven't seen before and we haven't seen before. This method, this way of looking at plants, reveals the laws of nature by growing the plant inside us. And it's all about what is happening in the body and how you're feeling. It's not something that's outside of the self. I mean, the plant that you're working with is outside of yourself. But to reveal the laws of nature that can show us the essence of the plant, we have to feel that within ourselves. And then the resonance of the plant can come after growing it inside. You have the true resonance of the plant. You're literally in co-resonance with the plant, and that brings a true recognition of something other than the self. Goethe called it seeing with the eyes of spirit, inner eyes, and he called it living thinking, that it brought a revelation of consciousness as we connect with life flooding out of itself. I just found this very, very inspiring, and I couldn't go back after hearing these concepts to just looking in a cold, factual, objective, scientific way at a plant again. And I think you'll feel the same as well when we go through the actual method itself, which is just coming up. So just to remind us that we're on this human journey of universal oneness, and that this brings about an experience of self-evident truth when we're looking looking for the inner essence of the plant that's flooding out of itself, of every pore. It brings a spiritual revelation, basically, and then what is revealed goes into our will, goes right into the solar plexus, into our will, and it drives us to do something, to capture that essence, to catch that part of the essential nature of the plant that has changed us as well. There's the changing of ourselves, and we're trying to catch what's changed in ourselves at the same time as catching that essential nature of the plant. So this process kind of turns you upside down and inside out, and the best way to kind of show that is using the infinity sign, where if you're following the infinity sign, you can see that here we're starting on the outside, and then at this crossover point we're going on the inside now. And so we've been transformed. There's been a transformational process by meeting this eternal divine essence nature of the plant, has somehow allowed us to meet that inner nature and divine essence of ourselves. And so we come out changed as well. It's like the observer is changed by the observation, and that's the real nature of science that is kind of only really touched on by the quantum physicist and the astronomers, and this part of science that sees the mystery within the atom, that is reflected in the mystery within the macrocosm of the heavens and our solar system and the whole nature series that we can see. But that's another video. So I want to actually go through the method now, which is a 7-step method. My teacher Margaret called it the pilgrim's process, or climbing the mountain. So it starts. Let me see if I can get this right. It starts here with this Goethe called intuitive precognition, and this is like where it's like a first impression when you're meeting a person or a plant or a landscape. You get to the top of the mountain, you see the view for the first time. So it's your first impression, and it's very much a kind of soul mood feeling. You know, like when you go to a party and you see someone across the room, it's like you get a definite feeling. You can't explain to communicate to somebody else what's driving what's attracting you to something. So it's like a kind of it's like a soul meeting, and it's very subjective, and it's very intimate, and very difficult to communicate in a conscious way. And so, but it's really crucial. It's a really important part of the whole process of this 7-step scientific method of Goethe, because what you feel at the intuitive precognition, so it's pre-conscious in a way, is going to be worked with and shaped and brought into manifest reality in a conscious way at the end of the 7 steps, in a form in this case, working with medicinal plants in a form or of a medicine that can be given to somebody else, and its therapeutic indication can be described, which fully encompasses that first intuitive precognition, that first feeling, that first soul meeting. So it's a really important piece to not throw out, because we're going to be honing that and refining that and taking it into a physical reality and a physical manifestation that we can consciously communicate with other people. So I just want to give you some examples of how we can capture that first impression. And the best way to do that is through artistic representation and drawings. So because it's like a mood picture, it's an abstract picture of your feeling. So a lot of the examples are very abstract mood images. So I'm just going to get some of those to show you. Okay, so here's an example of a mood image of Chinese Artemisia sinensis, which is what moxa is made of for acupuncture. So you can see that it's very much a mood feeling, and it's image representation, and it's quite abstract. It shouldn't really be looking like the plant, because you're not really working in the physical at this point. You're working in the soul meeting of the plant. Here's another example. This is of gum rock rose, Staver, the sisters Ladnifer, which is a very common plant here in South Portugal. And here's another one, which is really very, very faint. I don't know whether you can even see that. It's like a purpley lilac image of the native lavender, the top lavender, Lavandula stoicus, which is the native lavender in Portugal. So really then, when we would be working in a group, which is the ideal for a plant study, we would be sharing, we'd be doing all this in silence, we would be meeting the plant in silence. So you really need to not be distracted with other things. Walk to the plant in a very ceremonial and sacred manner, in silence, really focusing on opening yourself up to meeting a new being that could actually have a very important role in your life if they're going to give you some amazing medicine to help you. So really approach the plant in a very respectful and ceremonial way. And then there's space for the impression to resonate within you of this soul meeting, this first impression, this intuitive precognition of the plant. Then the drawing, this outpouring of this soul meeting, when we're sharing in the group, we can describe why we chose the colours we chose, where we felt that connected with our body, our feelings, and the relationships between the different colours and the different shapes that emerge through the abstract drawing of the first impression. Then we would go back to the plant and we would begin the fact-finding. So that's the subjective soul meeting, and now we want the objective botanical features of how the plant is representing itself. And this is this first step here. So after the intuitive precognition, the next step is, this is the image of somebody with a magnifying glass to really look at all the fine detail. And this is kind of working in the earth element and chipping away at the facts. And this can feel quite clean and clinical because it's very contained. It's the opposite of what we experienced with the soul meeting. And this is where modern science excels, in this area of fact-finding. But that's where it ends. It begins and ends there for modern science. Whereas with Goethean science, that's the beginning. And there's 6 more steps after that to try and bring full circle this intuitive precognition of the soul meeting. So with the exact sensorial perception, which is how Goethe termed this first step, we do exercises to really try and see the plant in its physical expression. And like Schiller said, to really see nature, you have to recreate her within yourself. So really good exercises to remember the plant is to draw from memory, or to draw with eyes closed, or to try and catch the gestalt of the plant by drawing, doing a timed drawing of just a minute. So I've got some examples of that as well. Charcoal is a good medium to use for that. This is drawing the native lavender from memory. So there's the whole plant and then the flower detail. Then this is trying to draw the gestalt of the plant in a minute. And this is trying to draw it with eyes closed. And as soon as you open your eyes, that's the end of the drawing. So these are kind of really useful exercises to really try and get the imprint of the plant within you, because you're the instrument that's interpreting it. And also, whilst doing these exercises, to pay attention to how it makes you feel. You know, are you starting to feel really excited and really stimulated, or are you starting to feel very relaxed and calm? And this is already giving you information about the nature of the plant and its qualities, and how it might have this medicinal action to benefit somebody with an imbalance. Other ways of really trying to get a different aspect of the plant. This is Vervain, and because Vervain is so airy, and you know, it's almost invisible when you see it in nature. You can almost pass by it if it doesn't have its little luminous purple flowers. So there's so much air and magical element to this plant. So it's quite difficult to capture that. And this is like a typical sort of study sheet where you've got the whole, and then you're, as Goethe says, you distinguish the different parts, and then you're trying to put it together again. But here's an example of how you can capture that invisibleness of Vervain by using a different colour background so that it's standing out like a silhouette, or you can use different coloured sheets of paper to bring out a white flower, or bring out an airiness of a plant formation. And here's another drawing in colour of Vervain by memory again. Then you can move on to, once you've really kind of got to know the plant from memory, then you can maybe be drawn into an aspect of it that really interests you, like an individual leaf or an individual flower. Here's a flower of a Staver, and you can start to do more detailed botanical drawing. And by looking at the plant in such detail and starting to do the drawing, you start to notice the patterns in it. You start to notice the growth patterns and the growth process. And that brings us to this next step, which Goethe called exact sensorial imagination. And that's where you're following the growth process and you're trying to fill in the gaps within you and within time of a plant that's in leaf, how it moves into flower, how it moves into fruit and seeds. So there's like a growth process there, and if you're lucky, if it's an annual, you can see all those things happening at once. For example, in the calendula, you can see the buds, you can see the full flower, you can see the spent flower, and then you can see the seeds. And so you can follow that growth process. And this is a fluid movement. It's working in the water element, and the picture is showing the person swimming in a pool. And by going backwards and forwards through this growth process, it's like running a film. You've got all the individual pieces, and then when you run it all together through a projector, it all starts to, you can see the whole process in following, and you can then, from that, start to catch glimpses of patterns. Oh, that's happening in the leaf, and look, it's happening in the fruit pod, like back to our veg. So you start to see patterns, and this brings a kind of aha moments, which is like inspiration of the air element. So by following the growth pattern, doing these drawings and these exercises, you start to see patterns, and you start to say, oh, it's doing this, it's doing that, it's doing, look, it's doing it again. And so you start to catch a glimpse of the essence of the plant. And once you've got all this information, the next step is to do a meditation with the plant where you're trying to rebuild, following its physicality, but also feeling into the essence that's coming through. Through meditative process, you start to put all these pieces together, the intuitive precognition, the exact sensorial perception and imagination, your aha moments, and you put it all together. And Goethe said that you then breathe a life-filled giving onto the plant, and that then gives you that then gets you in touch with being the being and beholding this being that you're working with. And he described that as a moment of passion. And here we are at the top, a flame, upside down, turned inside out and upside down on top of the mountain at the peak of our study, of our interaction, where we really feel we're at one with the plant and we really get its essence. And we then have this, we're aflame with passion. It's like a falling in love. And that passion goes for your will power again. And you then have this drive that you want to share the message, spread the message, shout it from the top of the mountain. So now you're coming back down the other side of the mountain with this incredible passion, that because you've got it, you've got what the plant's trying to communicate. And now you're trying to catch the essence again of, well, what part of the plant is the best way to express this? Is it going to be the flower, the leaf, the root, the whole plant? So you're again in the air process of you're moving around to try to get the part of the plant that really catches the essence, that can be that the spirit can die into matter, into a physical preparation. So the next step, the penultimate step, is back in the water element, where we're trying to incarnate the essence of the plant into a material form. So that this involves pharmacy methods. So it's like, how do you make a preparation? How do you capture that essence in a physical preparation? So you know what the therapeutic indication is, what the quality and the essence of the plant is from when you reach the top of the mountain and you behold the being, you've become the being. You've worked out which part of the plant is really expressing that. And now you're working out what is the best pharmacy medium to express that in a material product. So is it going to be an external preparation in oil? Is it a water-soluble constituent that could maybe be just made into a tea for a compress or to drink, or extracted into a tincture or extracted into a glycerin? How are you going to capture it physically, and with consideration of the chemical constituents to guide which medium of pharmacy is best going to serve that. And so, you're knowing the chemistry of the plant does come in useful, and this here's a point in fact. So once you've sussed which medium you're going to use, you're then going to make your preparation. And now we're back at the earth. We've earthed our product. We've got a new product, and we have the knowledge. We have the conscious steps of how we got to this part, and it encompasses and embraces that first intuitive precognition of the essence of the plant. And now we can express it consciously and we want to spread the word. We want to share the message with others. So, and at the same time, we have been on this journey, this human journey of universal oneness with this plant, which has changed us and healed us in some way and given us, touched our will and our drive and our soul. So that's a very, very brief and rushed overview. I hope you get the essence of the Goethe's scientific method. There's an article I've written with illustrated examples again that goes into a little bit more detail if you want to have something that to read about this. And there's a link that will probably be below the video. And I'm really happy to talk to anyone who wants to find out a little bit more about this process and about any study groups that we're doing, is to get in touch directly with me or through Pam. And yeah, I'd be really happy to share more on this. And the article is on our website, which is www.theherbalpath.net, theherbalpath.net. Okay, thank you so much for listening, and get out there and start communing with those plants. They're just sitting there waiting for you. Bye bye.